I used to cringe every time I would get an order for a Ripplefold drapery, and now I don't, because I have a clear understanding of how a Ripplefold drapery works and the differences between Buttmaster and Overlap Ripplefold. So I have some props here to show you to help me explain the difference. So Buttmaster, B-U-T-T, master, Buttmaster. That means your master carriers are going to kiss each other. So they're gonna butt together, like they're the butt of the joke. So this is what they look like. So these two snaps on the inside and these two over here, this would be if you have a pair of drapes that meet in the middle. So they would just touch each other or butt together rather than overlapping. So this is what the overlap looks like. And this little rod sample is so small that it comes off. So bear with me and I will try to keep them from coming off. But basically, you can see how the one nestles inside the other and they overlap. So this is really ideal if you're trying to block out as much light as possible, say in your master bedroom and you have blackout lining in your drapery, because each panel will overlap the other and block out the light. But I don't really like this for Ripplefold, because a Ripplefold drapery is one where it has these really nice soft S curves, like a wave. Some people call it a wave drapery. But the beauty of a Ripplefold is the nice soft curves that make the drapery just a really modern, soft wave. And then when you go and stop that shape in the middle and go flat with that part, to me, it interrupts the beauty of the wave. So I only do this when it's really, really important to kind of block as much light as possible. So rather than the overlap, I will typically try to, not convince, but encourage is a better word, encourage a designer or homeowner that this is gonna be a more beautiful overlapping, or let's see, master carrier. That's what these are called. Whatever kind you pick, these are master carriers, and then you just have to specify which kind of master carrier you want when you order a Ripplefold rod. So you have to pick Buttmaster or Overlap. So that's why when I'm designing a drapery with a client or a designer, helping them spec the rod, I will encourage them to go with the Buttmaster, because it will keep the flow of the S wave consistent and all the way to the middle where they meet. So this one will curve in and this one will curve in, and they'll both meet in the middle. And to me, it's a more beautiful drapery that way. You know, if your whole drapery is going to be beautiful and curving, why stop that flow in the middle? Just keep it beautiful all the way through. And in all reality, the idea of the overlap, blocking more light, works really well up at the top of the drapery, but sometimes the drapery doesn't stay together all the way down the length, the full length of the drapery to the floor. So you're still gonna have some light coming in. I hate to say it, but it's not gonna block out all of the light. So if it's not gonna solve that problem 100%, let's keep it beautiful and stick with the Buttmaster. So that's the reason why I like this carrier better than the overlap. There might be other views, I'm sure there are, but that's just my own personal reason why I like the Buttmaster better. And so I'm working on a project right now that has a Buttmaster carrier, and this is a little bit trickier than your normal drapery Buttmaster, because what I'm working on is a one-way panel. So the way I have this in here right now set up would be for a pair. So it would be a panel over here and a panel over here, and these meet in the middle. So what I'm working on is a one-way panel. So typically a one-way panel, I'm going to take this end off and show you, typically a one-way panel would only have one of these on it, because you're going to pull it all the way closed on the one end, and then everything else will stay on the rod to the end, and then this would be your return on the other end. So you would just need one of these, and typically it would get a return plate on the return end to help that drapery stay put on the return. But in this case, these panels I'm making are for an office, and they're just going to be mounted up on the ceiling in front of the open office that does not have a wall. And they're going to be using this just to block off the entrance to this room, which is almost creating a wall when they want privacy. So there's no wall and no window. This is just a rod that is hanging in the ceiling between a room and a hallway. So this is going to be visible from both sides, whether you're in the room or in the hallway. And they want to have an option of drawing this drapery this way sometimes, or all the way this way sometimes, or having it closed. Or they can open it and leave the whole thing in the middle. So they can just move it around freely. There won't be any fixed returns. And so we call this a floating drapery. If you ever need to order something like that, that's the word you use. And then you tell them you need your Buttmaster carrier on each end. So typically when you have a pair, like I had this before, they would touch in the middle where there's the two snaps. The two snaps would touch. But in this case, we want to have one of these at each end. So what's going to happen is the one that was over here is now over here, and this one is on the other end. So now we have the ones that just have one snap on the inside, and you see they don't touch because the rest of the plastic parts are in the way, but that's okay because it's not meant to have those touch. All of the carriers, this is the master carrier, so then all of the carriers that look like this are going to be floating in between the Buttmasters. And I only have two little samples to show you. One is black and one is white, because all of these parts and the rods come in black if you need that option. So I'm just gonna slide two of these carriers on here for this demonstration, and then you can see how this is gonna be set up. So all of the carriers in the middle that are gonna help the drapery function and glide along this track easily, those go in between the two Buttmaster carriers with the single snap on the inside, rather than typically that would be on the outside. Okay, so hopefully you're following along with me at this point. The reason we want to have one of these on each end is that so if they operate this and pull it all the way to this side, this is the leading edge and it's beautiful. But what if they want to go to the other direction? Then they push the whole thing this way, and now this is the leading edge and it's finished with a beautiful edge. And it's making that S shape the whole time. It never loses the S shape of the Ripplefold. So this is the snap tape for the Ripplefold. But this is the part that I wanted to really explain, is how do you know how much of this you need, and how do you use the chart, the famous Ripplefold chart, to help you make this drapery? So the answer is, I only use the chart to help me order the fabric so I have enough yardage. But once I have the rods in stock, I'll go ahead and order the rods because I know what size the opening is. I measured it myself and measured, basically wall to wall. So this rod will fit inside the opening of this office wall to wall. And you just take a tiny deduction so that the end cap, there's a little tiny end cap, fits in there. And then typically you would have your return plate, but in this case, because we're using a master carrier on each end, we're not going to have the end plate, but we will have a little end cap just to block this hole up. So just take a tiny deduction, and then that's how you order your rod. And then you tell the hardware company that you need this whole drapery to be floating, and you need master carrier on each end, and then they will, and you have to tell them the fullness that you want. So with Ripplefold, you get an option between 60%, 80%, 100%, and 120%. And that's always on the chart, the options of the fullness. And the designer already knew they wanted 100%. So that's easy. Tell the hardware company to make this 80%, and that tells the hardware company how many of these carriers to put on the rod. So the thing that the chart does not tell us as a workroom is when you order a rod like this that's floating with a Buttmaster on each side, the chart does not have a scenario for that. It only has a scenario for the carrier, the master carrier on one end, and then a helper and an end plate on the other end. So remember, this is the end plate. It has a snap on the return plate. And then this is a helper. This little stationary, it doesn't go anywhere. This is your helper. And you don't always have to use it, but just know that it's there. Oh, and this is a helper for a pinch plate, I just noticed. When you have a helper for Ripplefold, it's going to have more of a place to put a snap. So I just wanted to point that out because if you read the chart, I'm going to read what it says right here. It says that the number of carriers shown below include the master carriers. So it includes this. So for Buttmaster, there's 3 snaps. And the number of snaps recommended below includes additional snaps for master carriers and return plates. So that's this. So, but it doesn't say it includes the helper. So if I'm just going to show you an example because this is the one I'm working on. I'm all over the place here. This is my work order for 2 of the panels. There's 2 separate offices with this fabric right here. So I have them on the same work order, but I'm going to just show you this one example on the chart. So the finish width is 107. And if I go to the chart and I look at 100% fullness right here, this is how you use the chart. You find out what fullness you want, and the designer told me 100%. And then you go down the chart to the finish width, which in this case it's 107. That's the opening of the office. So there's a range of 105 to 108, and mine is 107, so that's my number. And then it'll tell you if you go over here to this column, the number of carriers needed. So that is these guys, carriers. So on the chart here for the finish width of 107, the chart tells me I need 52 carriers. And then over on this column tells you how many snaps you need total. Because the chart, like I said up here, the chart says it includes the master carrier and the return plate. So carriers, it says it's 52, and then total snaps needed is 56. So that's 4 more total than carriers. So that means 52 plus 3 plus 1 for the return plate, this one. But like I said, this is going to be a floater, so it's going to have 2 sets of these. So that means 52 snaps plus 6 should be my number. And then so what I did was after the rods came in and got installed, the installer went ahead and put those up before the drapery was finished, because that way I can check my finish length, because this is going to be a ceiling mount, and this is a flush rod where it fits all the way up to the ceiling. There's no need for brackets or anything. It comes with holes right here, so they can just screw it up into the ceiling. So it's total ceiling mount. So he installed it, and then I can go check the length from the bottom of the rod to the floor, and then take my deduction for how much I want the drape off the floor. Okay, so when I went back to measure for my finished length, I could actually count how many carriers were on each rod, and then add 3 for this side and 3 for this side. And then I know exactly how many snaps I'm gonna need on my drapery. So I went back and measured that and counted the carriers, and I need a total of 58 snaps. So now that I know that, I can go ahead and cut my tape and know that my drapery is gonna fit this rod exactly, because I'm gonna have the exact amount of snaps, not too many, and I won't be missing any. And that's crucial, because if you are missing any, it's not gonna reach the end and fit onto the master carriers. And if you have too many, where are you gonna put that fabric? And the reason I say that this is important, and it's shocking, but you know, there's sometimes a loss of communication or a loss of understanding on how Ripplefold works between the designer, the workroom, and the hardware, and the installer, all those different people involved. Sometimes it doesn't get translated all the way through, and the chart doesn't tell us everything we need every time. And also sometimes the person assembling the rod might not put in the right number, or might miss one or put in an extra. There was a company I heard of that, I'm not going to name any names. I don't actually even know who this was, but somebody told a workroom that I was helping figure this out that they actually put in extra carriers above and beyond what the chart says to put in, just so that you'll have extra. And then so if the workroom is making their drapery according to the chart, and then the installer takes the drapery to the install and goes to connect it, and there's too many carriers, well then they have to either figure out how many to take off, or they just leave them on and they hang it up, and it's just not a smooth transaction. And it could be a lot better if you know that your rod has the exact amount of snaps as your drapery. So that's where the next step of this process comes in for me, which is what I do before I cut the fabric. Now let's talk about what you do after you know how many snaps you need on your Ripplefold drapery. The first thing you need to do, and the chart doesn't tell you this either, is get your master snaps ready to fit the master carrier, because the Ripplefold tape only comes with the snaps this far apart, which is about 4 1/4 inches. So with the 2 snaps that you need on the very end of your drapery being 1 inch apart, you see this is the Buttmaster carrier. I have a ruler around here. Oh, here we go. These are always 1 inch apart, these 2 snaps on this exact Buttmaster carrier. There might be other brands that are different, but for the most part they're going to be 1 inch apart. And so when your snap tape comes 4 1/4 inches apart, you have to overlap, like make a little fold in your tape like this, or you can cut out a section of it because it makes kind of a thick tape. If you leave it all in there, you have to sew over all of that at the sewing machine, so plus your fabric. So usually I'll cut that out, but in this little demonstration I'll just leave it folded over, and then you have to measure, and I still have them like 1.5 inches apart, so I have to fold more under, and then just keep playing with it until you get those 2 snaps 1 inch apart. You want to be really accurate. Okay, so here we go, we have 1 inch apart, and so I'll just take a stapler and staple that for the time being into place. Eventually I'll take those out, but now this is ready to use as basically my pattern for my fabric. And also you want to determine how much you want here left over, because whatever is beyond this first snap is basically your overlap or leading edge. So let me show you how this works. So now that I have the snaps the correct distance to snap onto the carrier, I'm gonna snap them in just to show you how it looks. So that's where the first 2 are gonna go, and then the next one is gonna wrap around and connect to that inner snap, and that is your leading edge. But in this case, it's basically the return, because remember, these are floating on the one that I'm going to make, and you'll see in this video it's sitting right over there. So then you want to decide how big to make this, and typically I will kind of play with my tape and run the next one over to where there's going to be a carrier. So these are the little, let me show you this. This is a little pendant that comes with your hardware, and this is what snaps on to the snaps that go into the carriers. So I'm going to snap this little guy onto the next snap on the tape, and it's really hard with your fingers. I just got it, but typically I'll use pliers. So now I can snap, turn this around, this guy into, get it turned around, into the carrier. So see, there's like a little bump in this pendant, and it snaps into the carrier, and that's also a little difficult. Okay, so there it is. So this is how a Ripplefold works, and then the next one would go to the next carrier, and so on and so on and so on. Okay, so now that I know how that's gonna look, I'll take this off. These are really hard to take off of here. There we go. Okay, so for the drapery that I'm making, I need to make sure that each end looks like this, and each end has the same amount beyond the first snap. And this one, so 1, 2, 3, these are the master carrier snaps. These are not going to get any pendants like this. They're just going to stay by themselves. So I need to make sure I have 52 of these snaps in between the last 3 on each end. So that's a total of 58 snaps, but the first 2 and the last 2 have to be 1 inch apart. So now that I know that, I can count off 58 snaps and cut this and get each end ready. And then I can just go and measure this, and I know exactly how much fabric to cut. So I don't cut any fabric until I do this. And then I measure this, and then I know when I cut my fabric, I'm gonna have enough and it's gonna fit and it's gonna be easy. Rather than if I don't do this and I cut my fabric and I trust the chart and I put the tape on and I hope and pray that it's gonna fit, then you have a little sleepless night before install day because you're not quite sure if that rod has the same amount of snaps that the chart says it's gonna have. So this is the whole gist of my story on how I've overcome my fear of Ripplefold just by having a process of knowing what kind of master carriers you're gonna have, whether it's Buttmaster or Overlap. And then once you have the rod in stock, you don't have to have it installed, but I wait until at least I have the rods in my possession, or the designer has them in their possession. If it's close enough, I will go and physically count them, or if I trust their knowledge of what I'm talking about. Not everybody knows what the carriers are and the snaps on the master carrier. But in any case, I will physically count almost all the time myself the master carriers on the rod and the snaps on the master carriers and write that down, and then that is my plan. I will just make sure that I cut my tape so that it has the same exact amount of snaps that I need for the rod. And then I can cut the fabric, put it on, table it, finish it, fold it up, put these on, and it's done. And it's gonna fit perfect every time. And I hope that made sense. And if you have any questions, let me know. Some of this will be explained or shown in the Patreon extended cut because there's so many steps. I can't show everything in a video. It would be a super long video. And besides the 2 that I'm working on with this sheer fabric, this is the one I'm talking about. So these are unlined, and so this is my little sample. Besides these 2, I'm also working on 2 other panels for the same office that are in a different fabric that is not a wide sheer. This one I'm railroading, so there's no seams to worry about. But on the other one, there's gonna be some seams, and there's some other tricks that I've learned in how to deal with your seams so that the seams fall in the back spaces, not in the front spaces. And let me know if you have any questions. I want to give a special shout out to my friend Lauren Landers. That's whose head I'm wearing today. If you're needing a break from watching sewing videos or design videos, go check out Lauren Landers on YouTube. She is my inspiration for doing YouTube videos and Patreon. I also have her shirt on today. Lauren is a sailor and she makes sailing videos. She's a brilliant and fierce young lady who sails her sailboat, all by herself, all over the world. She currently recently sailed her boat from Panama to French Polynesia, all by herself. It took a long time, and she even had to climb the mast under sail, imagine, 60 feet up her mast, while she was sailing to fix something way up there. And you can watch that episode. It's amazing. But I just wanted to say hi to Lauren and tell all of my friends out there on YouTube that if you need a break from watching your sewing videos and design videos and whatever else, go check out Lauren because she is inspiring and a beautiful person, and I'm gonna see her in a couple days. So she's on my mind and I'm excited to see her. And I want to say to Lauren, thank you for showing us older ladies how to take a leap of faith and show other people what we do through YouTube videos and Patreon. You're doing a lot of good things out there in the world, and I'm very thankful for you. Can't wait to see you.